When I ran outside, my heart froze. My little girl was standing behind Karen's Cybertruck, her hands tied with a rope Karen had wrapped around her waist. Karen sat in the driver's seat wearing her bright red jacket, yelling, "Your daughter broke HOA rules. She needs to learn a lesson." My daughter cried, "Dad, please help me." Karen revved the engine, laughing like she owned the whole neighborhood, but she didn't know one thing: the girl she was trying to scare. The child she tied behind her truck was the police chief's daughter, and I was already running toward them. Before you hear what happened next, tell me where you're watching from, and don't forget to follow for more real HOA stories where justice always wins. I heard my daughter scream before anything else, a sharp, terrified cry that cut through the quiet afternoon like a siren. I dropped the tools in my hand and sprinted toward the driveway, dust rising around my shoes as I ran. My heartbeat slammed in my ears, louder than the wind, louder than the birds, louder than every sound around me. And then I saw it. My little girl stood behind Karen's Cybertruck, her small hands tied with a thick yellow rope wrapped around her waist and pulled tight behind her back. She wasn't injured, but her face was red, wet with tears, and shaking with fear. Her shoes scraped against the pavement as she tried to keep her balance. Karen sat in the driver's seat of her shiny silver Cybertruck like she owned the world. She wore her bright red jacket, the same one she wore every time she wanted to show power, and her sunglasses sat low on her nose as if she were too important to look directly at anyone. She revved the engine lightly, just enough for the truck to rumble, not enough to move. It was a threat, a warning, a cruel scare tactic, and my daughter flinched every time the motor growled. Karen leaned out the window, pointing an accusing finger. "She broke the HOA rules. Kids are not allowed to draw chalk on sidewalks. This neighborhood must stay perfect. I won't tolerate childish mess." My daughter sobbed, her voice cracking. "Dad, please help me. I didn't do anything bad." Her small body trembled, her little hands gripping the rope to keep herself steady. She wasn't hurt, but she was terrified. And for a child, fear is its own kind of pain. I forced myself not to explode right there. "Karen," I said sharply, walking faster, "untie her. Now." She scoffed and tossed her hair. "Excuse me? I'm the HOA president. I enforce the rules. If you parents won't discipline your kids, then I have to. Someone has to keep this place in order." I clenched my fists, trying to control the storm boiling inside my chest. "She's a child, not a criminal," Karen snapped. "She ruined community property." She drew a giant chalk heart on the sidewalk. Pink chalk, disgusting, against HOA guidelines. "She drew a heart for her mom," I said through my teeth. "That's not vandalism." Karen revved the engine again. Louder this time, my daughter jumped, her voice cracking as she cried louder, "Dad, I'm scared. Please, please help me." Neighbors started peeking out of windows and stepping onto porches. Some whispered, some gasped, but no one moved closer. Karen had made half the neighborhood afraid of her through years of threats, fines, and intimidation. Karen stepped out of the truck finally, slamming the door shut. Her heels clinked against the pavement as she marched toward my daughter, grabbing the rope like she was handling a wild animal. "She needs to understand consequences," Karen hissed. "Breaking rules has punishment. That's how we keep this neighborhood clean." I stepped closer, my voice deepening. "You frightened her enough. Let her go." Karen ignored me entirely and tugged the rope, making my daughter stumble forward. She didn't fall, but she cried out in panic, "Please stop, I didn't do anything wrong." The sound of her fear ripped through me. "You think I care about her tears?" Karen snapped. "Tears don't erase rules. Tears don't fix the mess she made." I took one more step toward them, the anger inside me rising like fire. "You're going too far." Karen turned sharply toward me, eyebrows raised in mock shock. "Oh, really? You think you get to tell me my limits? I'm the HOA president. I decide what is acceptable. I decide who follows rules." She pointed her finger in my face. "And you better teach your daughter better manners. If she can't follow simple guidelines, maybe she should stay indoors." I could see the neighbors watching, horrified. Some whispered, "She's lost it. This is too far. That poor child." But Karen was too wrapped up in her ego to see how wrong she looked. She tightened the rope around her hand and dragged my daughter a few inches closer to the truck, slowly, not painfully, but enough to terrify her. Enough to make her cry harder. Karen smirked. Maybe this will teach her something. Maybe next time she'll think twice before defacing the sidewalk. My daughter sobbed. I don't want to go. Dad, help me. That was the moment something inside me snapped. Not in anger, but in clarity. Karen didn't know. She didn't know who I was. She didn't know what I did for a living. She didn't know that the man she was mocking, threatening, and dismissing was the police chief. And she definitely didn't know that the child she tied behind her Cybertruck, the girl she tried to discipline and humiliate, the little voice crying for help, was the police chief's daughter. I stepped forward with a calmness she didn't recognize, a calmness that meant danger, but not for my daughter, for her. Karen lifted her chin, still arrogant, still convinced she was right. You better step back, she said smugly. I'm handling this situation. No, I said in a quiet, controlled voice. You're about to learn exactly how wrong you are. The wind shifted. The neighbors fell silent. My daughter looked at me with wide, hopeful eyes. Karen had no idea, but she was seconds away from facing a kind of authority she could never control. Karen's grip tightened on the rope as if she feared my presence more than the truth that stood in front of her. My daughter's breaths came out in small, broken sobs, her chest rising quickly with panic. The rope around her waist wasn't hurting her, but the humiliation, the fear, was more than any child should ever experience. I took another slow step toward them. Karen, this ends now. She spat out a frustrated laugh, flicking her sunglasses up onto her head. You think you can intimidate me? She said sharply. I run this street. I make sure everyone follows the rules. If people listened to me from the beginning, none of this would be happening. Her words were sharp, but her voice trembled, just slightly, as if she couldn't figure out why the neighbors were no longer backing her up. They watched from yards, porches, and sidewalks, whispering with disgust instead of respect. My daughter wiped her cheeks with the back of her hand. Dad, I'm sorry. I didn't know. You didn't do anything wrong, I said gently. You don't have to apologize. Karen scoffed loudly. Oh, please. She vandalized the sidewalk. Pink chalk everywhere, hearts, flowers, bubble letters. This is a family neighborhood, not an art festival. Mrs. Rivera, our next-door neighbor, finally gathered enough courage to step forward. She was drawing for fun. She wasn't destroying anything. Children need space to be happy. Karen glared at her. Happy? Happiness doesn't matter when the community image is at stake. Another neighbor whispered. She cares more about concrete than children. Karen snapped her head toward him. What did you say? He stepped back nervously, but the truth was out. Karen tossed the rope over her shoulder casually, as if dragging a child was normal for her. This brat needs to learn respect. I'm not hurting her. She's just frightened because she knows she did wrong. My daughter shook her head rapidly. I didn't know. I wanted Mommy to smile when she came home. Karen rolled her eyes. Oh, please, enough with the emotional excuses. The neighbors gasped softly. A few started filming on their phones, shifting the power dynamic even more. I kept my voice calm. Karen, untying her now is your only chance to walk away peacefully. She smirked. Are you threatening me? I'm warning you, I replied. Her eyebrows arched as she studied my face. She was trying to understand what she had missed, why I was so calm, why I wasn't arguing like the other parents she bullied. She didn't know. Not yet. Karen tugged the rope again, forcing my daughter one step closer to the truck. Maybe I should just drag her a few feet. Not enough to hurt her, just enough to remind her I'm serious. My daughter screamed, No, please no. The scream shattered any patience I had left. I moved closer, my voice firm. You're scaring her. You're scaring everyone. Karen raised her head proudly. Good. Fear makes people follow rules. I'm tired of being ignored. Maybe if parents like you disciplined your kids, I wouldn't have to. I could feel my pulse pounding, not out of anger, but out of the instinct to protect. My daughter clung to the rope around her waist, her eyes wide and watering. Mrs. Daniels shouted from the porch. You're out of control, Karen. Karen shot back. And you're all ungrateful. You wouldn't even have clean streets without me. No one respects me unless I enforce things. Her voice cracked slightly on the word respects, revealing something underneath. Insecurity, desperation, years of feeling invisible unless she was angry. You don't earn respect, I said quietly, by controlling people. Karen's jaw tightened. You talk too much. Then she reached toward the truck's door handle again. My daughter cried even louder. Dad, Dad, please don't let her take me. Karen tossed a glare at me. Oh, relax. I told you I'm not moving the truck. I just want to scare some sense into her. You're terrorizing a child, I said. She threw both hands up. This is ridiculous. I haven't even touched the gas. At that moment, another neighbor, Mr. Patel, came closer. You need to stop before you make things worse, she snapped. Stay out of this. You're the one who put the wrong size mailbox last year. You can't lecture me on rules. My daughter's sobbing grew louder. Her small shoulders shook under the afternoon sun. Karen looked back at her with irritation. Honestly, she's too dramatic. A little rope won't kill her. That was it. I stepped forward slowly, decisively, and the shift in the air was immediate. Karen blinked, noticing something different. The posture, the tone, the authority. What? She muttered. Why are you looking at me like that? I said nothing. Not yet. Instead, I knelt beside my daughter, ignoring the rope, ignoring Karen's protests. I looked my daughter in the eyes and brushed the tears from her cheeks. You're safe, I whispered. I'm right here. She nodded slowly, breathing shakily. Karen crossed her arms, irritated by the sudden shift in attention. Oh, come on, she's not in danger. You all are acting like I'm a monster, Mrs. Rivera replied softly. We're acting like you went too far. Because you did. Karen's face flushed with embarrassment, then rage. You all hate me. You've always hated me. I do everything around here. I fix problems. I keep this place organized, and this is what I get? I stood again, turning slowly. Karen, I said calmly, you have no authority to tie up a child. None, she scoffed. I have every authority. I'm the HOA president. This is my community. Her voice quivered again, pride fighting fear. I took one step forward. No, I said quietly. This community doesn't belong to you. And you just made a very big mistake. Karen blinked. What mistake? I lifted the edge of my jacket, just enough for the sunlight to hit the metal badge on my belt. The neighbors gasped. Karen's face drained of color. Her mouth dropped open. You're, she stuttered. I nodded once. I'm the police chief. Her hands went limp. The rope dangled uselessly. Her entire body froze. She finally understood. And it was already too late. For a long moment, no one spoke. The entire street seemed to hold its breath as Karen stared at my badge like it was something poisonous. The bright sunlight reflected off the metal, casting a faint gleam across her shocked face. Her bravado faltered. Her chin trembled slightly. The rope in her hand dangled uselessly, swinging gently in the breeze. But even with her confidence shattered, she tried to rebuild it. I didn't know, she stammered, her voice scraping the air. You never told anyone you were the chief. I raised an eyebrow. I didn't think I needed to announce my job to keep my child safe from her neighbors. Karen blinked rapidly, trying to regain her footing. Well, it doesn't change the fact that your daughter broke the rules. She deserves a warning. Tying a child with a rope, I cut in, is not a warning. It's intimidation. Karen's eyes jerked away from mine as if the force of my stare was too much. She looked around at the neighbors, almost pleading, searching for anyone, just one person, who might support her. But all she saw was disappointment, fear, disgust. People she'd scolded for the color of their bushes or the height of their grass. People she'd fined for leaving trash cans out too long. People who'd endured her temper for years. Now none of them stood with her. Mrs. Daniels shook her head slowly, her wrinkled hands gripping her cane. You've gone too far this time, Karen. Karen swallowed hard. You don't understand. If I don't enforce the rules, no one listens. People take advantage. They break guidelines. They ignore me. Mr. Patel stepped forward, folding his arms. We ignore you because you make everything a battlefield. The young couple from House #12 added, You scare us. That's not leadership. Karen's shoulders twitched, as if each comment added invisible weight. I'm not trying to scare anyone. I'm trying to do my job. I stepped closer, my boots hitting the pavement with heavy, controlled steps. No one hired you to scare children. I didn't hurt her, she snapped, voice cracking with desperation. You frightened her, I said. My daughter clung to my leg, her small hands squeezing tightly. I placed a steady arm around her shoulders. Karen raised both hands in the air. I swear I wasn't going to drag her. The truck was parked. I only wanted to scare her so she wouldn't draw on the sidewalk again. Scaring a child, I said, is abuse of power. Karen's lips trembled. I didn't think she'd cry so much. Mrs. Rivera shook her head. You never think about feelings, Karen. You only think about rules and fear. Karen shot her a glare but didn't respond. Her usual confidence was unraveling like yarn pulled from a sweater. Her voice shrank to nearly a whisper. I just want respect. I stared at her for a long moment, letting silence fill the space between us. You don't get respect, I finally said, by tying a child to your truck. Karen clenched her jaw, her cheeks turning red with humiliation. It wasn't like that. It was exactly like that, Mr. Parker said. Neighbors murmured in agreement. Karen's breathing sped up. She stepped back until she hit the side of her Cybertruck. Her fingers fumbled at the seams of her red jacket. She looked trapped, not physically but emotionally, caught between pride and the reality she could no longer escape. You all hate me, she whispered. You always have. No, Mrs. Daniels said gently. We feared you. That's different. Karen's eyes widened, as if hearing it aloud cracked something inside her. Fear only lasts until someone stands up to it, I added softly. Karen shook her head rapidly. You're twisting everything. I'm the HOA president. If I don't keep order, this place falls apart. You all love this neighborhood because I keep it perfect. No, Mrs. Rivera said. We love it because we built it. Together. And you forgot that. The wind picked up, rustling the leaves on the trees, carrying away the loose dust on the pavement. The sunlight softened behind drifting clouds, giving the scene an almost surreal glow. Karen's voice dropped to a shaky whisper. If people didn't break rules, I wouldn't have to be like this. I stepped forward, talking directly to her. You choose how to respond. That's on you. She blinked, stunned by the simplicity of the truth. I pointed to the rope still tangled around my daughter's waist, and this choice was wrong. Karen looked at the rope as if seeing it for the first time. Slowly, she reached out and touched it, and her hand trembled, not from fear of me, but from realizing what she had done. In that moment, she finally understood she had crossed a line she couldn't hide behind HOA rules anymore. She opened her mouth to speak, maybe to apologize, maybe to defend herself, but she froze. Behind us, the faint sound of sirens drifted through the air. Karen's head snapped up. No, she breathed. No, please tell me you didn't call them. I said nothing. Her face paled further. You're kidding, right? You wouldn't involve actual police for this. You tied my daughter to a truck, I said calmly. What did you expect? Karen's knees wobbled slightly. Her pride battled panic in her eyes. But I didn't drag her, she shouted desperately. The truck never moved. You tied a child, Mrs. Rivera reminded her. That alone is wrong. Karen pressed her back against the Cybertruck as if it could protect her from consequences. You can't arrest me. I'm the HOA president. This is my neighborhood. This, I said, is my family, the neighbors murmured, behind me, the weight of the truth pushing them closer together. The sirens grew louder. Karen pressed a shaking hand to her mouth. Her world, built on rules and control, was collapsing. This wasn't supposed to happen, she whispered. Before I could respond, the first police cruiser turned onto the street, lights flashing, tires rolling slowly over the pavement. Karen's shoulders slumped, and for the first time since I'd known her, she looked genuinely afraid. The police cruiser rolled to a stop at the curb, its lights coloring the street with alternating flashes of red and blue. The neighbors who had been whispering moments earlier fell silent, their faces tightening with anticipation. Even the birds in the nearby trees seemed to pause, as if sensing the shift in the air. The wind had slowed, allowing the tension to settle thickly across the neighborhood. Karen stood rigid against her Cybertruck, hands twisting nervously at the edges of her red jacket. She looked smaller than usual, her usual confidence completely stripped away. Her eyes darted from the patrol car to me, then to the rope around my daughter's waist, as if she were trying to rewrite the story in her mind before anyone could speak. The police officer stepped out, a young sergeant named Holt, someone new to the force, but steady in the face of chaos. He glanced at me respectfully before turning his attention to Karen. "Ma'am," he began, "we received reports of a child being restrained. Can you explain what's going on here?" Karen's eyes widened with false innocence. "Restrained? No, that's exaggerated. I wasn't restraining anyone. I was simply supervising her." She broke rules. I was disciplining. My wife had now stepped outside, pale from shock but standing strong. She moved immediately to our daughter's side and wrapped her arms around her. Our daughter clung tightly, burying her face in her mother's clothes. Seeing her safe in her mother's arms added fuel to the anger simmering inside me, but I forced my voice to stay level. "Officer," I said calmly, "Karen tied her to the back of her truck." Karen gasped, offended. "No, I tied the rope loosely. She could move. She wasn't trapped. I was just teaching her about responsibility." Officer Holt raised an eyebrow. "You tied a minor with a rope. That qualifies as restraint." Karen's voice shook. "It's not like that. I wasn't going to hurt her. I didn't drive. The truck stayed parked. This is all being blown way out of proportion." Mrs. Rivera stepped forward, her hands trembling with irritation. "We all saw it. She bound the child because of chalk drawings." Karen pointed at her angrily. "You stay out of this." But Mrs. Rivera didn't step back. For once, someone stood firmly between Karen and her bullying. Officer Holt's gaze shifted to me. "You want to make a formal statement, Chief?" Karen's eyes snapped wide open. "Chief?" she repeated weakly. "Chief? What does he mean? Chief? What chief?" I pulled my wallet from my pocket and held out my badge. Sunlight glinted off the metal edge, sending a sharp gleam directly into Karen's shocked eyes. Her breath caught. No. You're the police chief? You? You live here? You're her father?" "I am," I said softly. She staggered back, bumping into her own truck. I didn't know. If I had known—" "You shouldn't need to know," I interrupted. "You shouldn't tie anyone's child." Karen opened her mouth, then closed it again. She looked like she was drowning in regret while trying to cling to the last piece of control she had left. "I wasn't trying to cause harm," she said shakily. "I was trying to stop chaos. No one listens unless I enforce rules. You define chaos by your own fear," I replied, "and you enforce rules through intimidation." Her eyes brimmed with tears, not from sorrow, but from the sting of losing the authority she valued more than anything else. Officer Holt nodded gravely. "Ma'am, we need to talk. Please step aside." Karen shook her head vigorously. "No. I can explain. He's twisting things." I didn't say a word yet, I responded, calm and controlled. "You don't have to," she snapped. "Everyone takes your side. It's unfair." Mrs. Daniels spoke softly but firmly. "No, Karen. What's unfair is what you put that little girl through." Karen looked around desperately, hoping for someone to defend her. But no one did. The young couple from House #12 folded their arms. "You terrorized us for months," the husband said. "You fined us for kids leaving bikes out. You threatened to call towing companies because someone's bumper was an inch over the line." Karen looked wounded, as if the truth physically hurt her. "I wasn't wrong," she whispered. I just wanted order." "You want control," I corrected. "And today you crossed the line." Officer Holt stepped closer to her. "Ma'am, for now I need you to remain where you are while we collect statements. You're not under arrest at this moment, but you need to cooperate." Karen's breathing became rapid, her hands clawing at the fabric of her dress. "I can't be seen like this," she murmured. "I'm the HOA president. People look up to me." "No," Mr. Patel said sadly. "We were afraid of you." "That's not the same." Karen faltered, her legs wobbling. "I'm not evil," she whispered. "I was trying to do something right." "Then you should start by taking responsibility," I said steadily. A fragile quiet settled over the street. My daughter lifted her head slightly, still clinging to her mother, but now watching with wide, cautious eyes. Karen looked around helplessly, then suddenly pointed at me. You planned this. You wanted to humiliate me. That's why you didn't tell us you were the chief." "I didn't tell you," I said calmly, "because a uniform or badge shouldn't be the reason you treat someone with respect, especially a child." She froze at that. Officer Holt nodded. He's right. Authority doesn't change right from wrong. Karen's face crumpled. Her pride, the one thing she held like armor, finally shattered. She sank slowly onto the curb, her breath shaky, her head hanging as the weight of everything caught up with her. "I didn't want to be the villain," she whispered. "You became one," I replied gently, "the moment you tied a child." She covered her face with her hands. Officer Holt stepped back, giving me space to kneel beside my daughter. She pressed her face against my shoulder as I untied the last knot on the rope. "You're safe," I whispered. "It's over." She nodded slowly, still trembling. As I carried her toward the house, the neighbors watched with relief. They'd spent years under Karen's rule, fearing fines, yelling, and relentless intimidation, and now, for the first time, Karen wasn't standing above anyone. She was sitting alone on the curb, facing the consequences she never imagined would come. Behind me, the police radio crackled softly. Ahead of me, my wife waited with tearful eyes, ready to take our daughter inside to safety. And around us, the neighborhood, quiet, shaken, but finally awakening, felt the beginning of change, because fear had finally met someone who refused to fear it. The sound of the police radio buzzed softly as Officer Holt stepped aside to confer with the second officer. The street had fallen into an eerie calm. No yelling, no arguing, no rumbling engine from Karen's Cybertruck. Even the dogs in the nearby yards had grown quiet, as if sensing the gravity hanging in the air. Karen sat frozen on the curb, the red of her jacket violently bright against the gray concrete. Her hands rested limply in her lap, her eyes darting around like a trapped animal. She kept wiping her palms on her skirt as though fear made them sweat. The second police cruiser arrived, turning onto the street with slow caution. More neighbors peeked out, opening doors, stepping onto porches, gripping railings with white knuckles. It was as if the entire community was witnessing the unraveling of the very person who had ruled them with fear for years. My daughter rested her head on my wife's shoulder now, calmer but still trembling. Every now and then she'd look at Karen, then quickly look away, the memory of the rope still fresh enough to sting. My wife whispered soothingly, running her hand through our daughter's hair, "You're safe. You're safe now, sweetheart." Officer Holt approached Karen slowly, crouching slightly to meet her eye level. "Ma'am, we need to hear your side clearly. What exactly were you trying to do with the rope?" Karen swallowed, her voice faint. I wasn't going to drag her. I swear, I only tied her because she wasn't learning. I needed her to take the rules seriously." "By tying her to a vehicle?" Holt asked, calmly but firmly. Karen's breath hitched. "I wasn't dragging the truck. I wasn't hurting her. It was symbolic. Just fear, not harm." "Fear is enough," he replied. "Fear is not discipline." Karen shut her eyes tightly as if those words cut deeper than she expected. She looked around again, counting how many neighbors were watching, how many had their phones recording, how many stood united against her now. Her voice trembled out of her. "You all think I'm cruel, but I'm the only one who cares about this neighborhood. I'm the reason the lawns look good, the sidewalks stay clean, the trash cans don't stay out for days." Mr. Daniels, one of the oldest residents, stepped closer. "Karen, we've kept this neighborhood clean for decades. You didn't invent responsibility." Karen's face twisted. "You all ignore the rules, and I'm the only one who enforces them. I'm the only one who respects the HOA handbook." Mrs. Rivera crossed her arms. "The handbook doesn't allow tying children to vehicles." Karen flinched as if the words slapped her. "I didn't mean harm," she whispered. "I didn't mean to be the enemy." I stepped forward, my voice steady. "You became the enemy the moment you used fear instead of communication." Karen looked up at me with glassy eyes. "I wasn't trying to be a villain. Intent doesn't erase consequences," I replied. Officer Holt stood back up and signaled the second officer. "We need to proceed." Karen's eyes widened. You're not actually arresting me, right? Surely you're not doing that. I mean, look at this. This is just a misunderstanding." Holt shook his head slowly. "Ma'am, this isn't a misunderstanding. A child was restrained. A minor was frightened. That alone requires action." Karen's breathing sped up. She pressed her palms to her temples, shaking her head repeatedly. "You can't do this. I'm the HOA president. I'm respected. I'm needed. You're needed to answer for your actions," Holt replied gently. "Not to rule over people." The second officer stepped toward her, maintaining a respectful distance. "Ma'am, please stand." Karen didn't move. For a long second, she sat perfectly still, as if frozen in her own disbelief. Then slowly, she rose to her feet, her knees shaking so badly she nearly stumbled. The officer gently steadied her arm, not out of force, but to keep her from collapsing. I didn't think this would happen," she whispered, her voice cracking. I thought everyone would thank me for keeping the rules alive." Mrs. Daniels wiped a tear. "We never needed a dictator, Karen. We needed a neighbor." Karen's shoulders sagged. The officer pulled out the cuffs. She gasped, her eyes widening. "You're putting me in handcuffs? Really? For this?" Holt nodded. "For an investigation, yes." Karen shook her head violently. "No, please, no. People are watching. They'll talk. They'll laugh." "No one is laughing," I said quietly. "We're just relieved it's over." My daughter peered up at me from the safety of her mother's arms. "Dad, is she going away?" I crouched slightly to meet her eyes. "She's going to answer for what she did. That's all." She nodded slowly. Karen looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time. Not as a rule breaker, not as a nuisance, not as a threat, but as a child she frightened. Her face crumbled. I'm sorry," she whispered to her. The words wavered, fragile. My daughter said nothing, but she held onto her mother tighter. Officer Holt spoke. "Ma'am, please turn around." Karen hesitated. Then, finally, with trembling hands and shaking breaths, she turned. The cuffs clicked, not harshly, not violently, but with a quiet finality that echoed in the hearts of everyone watching. The neighbors let out a collective breath, relief mixed with disbelief. Karen was guided toward the police car, her red jacket swaying as she walked. She didn't resist. She didn't argue. She didn't shout. She accepted her fate with the weight of someone who finally realized their reign of fear was over. As the door closed behind her, the street felt lighter, like a storm had passed, leaving behind calm air and space for healing. My wife knelt beside our daughter. "You're okay," she murmured. "You're home." Our daughter buried her face into her mother's chest. I was so scared. "I know," I whispered, placing a hand on her back. "It's done now." The neighbors slowly approached us, not to stare, but to offer support. "She won't hurt anyone again," Mr. Patel said. "You stood up for us," the young couple added. "And for your family," Mrs. Rivera said, wiping her eyes. I looked at my daughter, holding her tightly. The truth settled gently inside me. Protecting my daughter wasn't just my duty as a father. It was my duty as the police chief. The police car carrying Karen disappeared slowly down the street, the flashing lights fading into the distance until they were nothing but a faint shimmer on the horizon. The moment the vehicle turned the corner, the neighborhood let out a breath it didn't realize it had been holding. It was as if a heavy, invisible pressure had finally lifted off every front lawn, every front porch, every heart. For years, Karen's presence had been like a shadow stretched across the block, unpredictable, demanding, loud, always looming. With her gone, the sunlight felt brighter, the air lighter, and the quiet safer. My wife stood beside me now, holding our daughter tightly as if afraid she might disappear if she loosened her grip. Our daughter pressed her small face into her mother's shoulder, still shaken but comforted by the familiar warmth. I rested a hand gently on her back. "You're safe now," I said, my voice calm. "Completely safe." Her little hand reached out and held my wrist. I didn't mean to make anyone angry. I just wanted Mommy to smile. My wife kissed the top of her head. "You didn't do anything wrong, sweetheart. Drawing a heart wasn't bad. It was kind. That's what matters." Slowly, more neighbors approached, not with fear, not with hesitation, but with sincerity and open concern. They came in small groups, each person wanting to say something, each carrying a mixture of apology and relief. Mr. Parker spoke first. "We should have stepped in earlier," he said. "We were scared. She had too much control over us. She used the rules like weapons," Mrs. Rivera added, "and she knew people were too afraid to disagree." Mrs. Daniels held her cane tightly, her voice shaky but strong. Fear only lasts as long as silence stays. Today, someone finally said, "Enough." The words floated around me, resting heavily but meaningfully. I never wanted to become the center of any neighborhood drama. I never wanted my job to overshadow my home. But today wasn't about authority. It was about protection. My daughter peeked up at the neighbors, her eyes still puffy from crying. She tied me because I drew a heart. Mrs. Daniels bent down just a little, using her cane for balance. She tied you because she forgot what hearts mean, dear. The young couple from down the street smiled gently. And now she'll never get the chance to scare you again. Children began appearing at the edges of driveways, holding chalk in their hands. It was like they had been waiting to see whether it was safe to play again. When they saw Karen's truck empty and the police cars gone, they slowly drifted closer, timid but curious. One little girl, about the same age as my daughter, walked forward. "Can we draw now?" she asked shyly. My daughter looked at me. I nodded. She hesitated, then whispered, "Dad, can I draw a heart again?" "Of course," I said softly. "You can draw 100. Her face brightened just a little, a small spark but enough. She knelt down on the sidewalk with the other kids, her hand trembling but steadying the moment the chalk touched concrete. She drew a heart again. Not perfect, a little shaky, but full of warmth. Her mother watched tearfully, covering her mouth with her fingers. Mrs. Rivera whispered to me, "You gave her strength today. She'll remember that forever." I exhaled slowly, letting the moment sink in. Nearby, Officer Holt approached me, paperwork in hand. "We'll finish this at the station," he said quietly. "There will be charges, possibly mandatory evaluation. We'll make sure she doesn't come near your family again." "Thank you," I replied. He gave a small nod before returning to his car. The street slowly returned to life. Neighbors began cleaning up their lawns again. Kids started laughing softly as they drew patterns on the pavement. Someone's dog barked, not out of fear, but simply because kids were playing. The sound felt normal, comforting. My wife leaned into me. "I can't believe she did that," she whispered. "I thought her temper was bad, but tying a child, she lost control of herself," I said. "She let power twist her." "Will she change?" my wife asked. "People change when consequences teach them what words couldn't," I replied. And today, she finally faced consequences. My daughter ran toward us after finishing her drawing, her face brightening as she threw her arms around both of us. "I'm okay now," she said, half reassuring herself, half telling us. "It's over." "Yes," my wife said, pressing her cheek against her daughter's head. "It's over." As the sun dipped lower, casting long golden shadows across the street, the chalk drawings glowed softly in the light. Hearts, stars, flowers, small scribbles, signs of childhood, signs of freedom, signs of a neighborhood healing. People waved at us as they went back into their homes. "You did the right thing, Chief," Mr. Patel said. "You reminded us we have a voice," Mrs. Daniels added. "You protected not just your child," the young husband said, "but all our kids." For the first time in a long time, the block felt united, not out of fear but out of shared strength. My daughter held our hands tightly as we walked back toward our front door. She looked up at me with her gentle, innocent eyes and asked, "Dad, she won't come back, right?" I smiled softly. "No, she won't, and if she does, she'll never hurt you. I promise." My wife kissed her forehead again. "We're together. And together, nothing scares us." As we stepped into our home, the wind carried away the last dust from Karen's tires, like the final echo of a storm long overdue for passing. And with the door closing behind us, I knew one thing. Fear had ruled the neighborhood for years. But today, fear lost. Because one frightened child spoke up, because one neighborhood finally stood together, and because a father, not just a police chief, refused to stay silent.